Hello everyone, this is John from Compass Rose Bushcraft. Over about the last year I have been experimenting a little bit with some knife making. I like kind of minimalist camping. I gave up tent camping a number of years ago and now largely only use a tarp. And I'm really trimming my gear down, and it struck me as being in the spirit of that to try to make one or two of my own knives. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the learning that's been involved in that for anybody else who may want to give it a shot. So my starting point was that I was given a used leaf spring by a friend, so it should be a 5160 spring steel. The first knife I made from it was a bushcraft knife, and I believe I've shown this before in a video. And so I took the steel, I cut it to length, I came up with the design, I put it into my forge to soften the steel, and then I took the angle grinder to it and I made this knife. And it's about a 4-inch blade and something similar in terms of the handle length, maybe just a tad shorter than that. The mistake I made in this one was a slight recurve here that I didn't intend initially, but with the cutting and the grinding, it formed as I was working on it. The other little thing is that the brass pins, in spite of sizing them carefully and all of that, when I was putting them in, it split the maple handle right here, just a tiny bit. But I filled that with epoxy and epoxied it all together, put it in clamps, put the pins in, and it's got a fairly comfortable grip. I think I may in the spring take the handle down just a little bit more with my Dremel and then refinish the wood. To finish the wood I use a mixture of my own making, which is 50-50 beeswax and mineral oil. And I mix those together under low heat and stir them together until they're blended, and then I use it as becomes kind of a cream, and I use that to protect the handle. It makes a nice finish for the wood, protects it from moisture, and seems to work really well. The other little error I made on this knife was that I should have done more finishing on the spine of the handle here. I thought that I could get all of that once I put the scales on, but instead the sander can't quite reach some of these spots once the scales were on. But having said that, it is comfortable to hold, a good strength, 90-degree spine, and overall for a first knife effort I'm pretty pleased with that. I still have to make a sheath with it, and this will likely become a gift for one of my kids, or a keepsake from Dad kind of thing. There we have it. The next project, I decided that I wanted to do some additional learning, practice some different techniques. So I made a brokeback sax, just a short, small one. I've always liked the design of the brokeback sax. I think it just, for whatever reason, like the shape of it. And I wanted to make a small one to experiment with some things. So the first thing was the shaping of it and putting a stick tang on rather than a full tang. And then I wanted to try doing a stacked leather handle. So I did that in 2 different colors of leather, and I think it's turned out to be a fairly nice pattern. Now it still needs finishing work. As you can see, it's rough. It has to be taken outside and sanded, but I can't really do that until the weather improves. And epoxying all of that together worked very well. The one thing that went wrong is while I was stacking the leather, I didn't notice that somehow the metal plate here next to the blade itself had ridden up the tang, and so it created a gap. So part of the learning experience was to take a piece of deer antler that I had and to make a little insert in there, and it actually looks kind of nice, and the spacer actually looks somewhat intentional. The other thing that was an experiment that went really well was I have never done any peening of metal, and so I needed to be able to peen the end cap on. And as you can see, I did that, and that went very, very well. I was very pleased with that process. So after I'd heat treated the blade, I didn't heat treat the end of the tang, and then I just heated a little bit to make sure it was soft enough, and then sort of cold peened it. And I'm actually very impressed with how well that went. I embedded the knife in a block of wood, and then with my ball peen hammer did some peening on that end of it, and it's secure, it's solid, it holds together well. Now, part of the learning is making mistakes, and the mistake I made on this, if I remake this knife, I will fix this, is that I put the stick tang almost in the center here of the blade, and it really should be more at the top of the blade near the spine, so that I could make a choil in here to protect the fingers. As this knife currently is, in using it, it would be very easy to slide your finger accidentally onto the blade, which of course is dangerous. So if I was to do this again, I would make sure that the stick tang came out more near the top, and then I would put a small choil in here where one could lodge the finger in order to protect it and to have a good grip on the knife and to be able to choke up on it. The knife I got a good, robust, fairly thick spine. My hope is that it could be used as a little bit of a light chopper, the stick tang notwithstanding, and or to do a little bit of batoning with it on a smaller piece of firewood, something about that big. It should be able to do. The idea is that it will eventually have a sheath, and it will hang on from straps upside down, which was apparently the traditional way that small saxes were carried, so that the knife doesn't rest on the blade, therefore the sheath doesn't have any impact on dulling the blade. And so my hope is to eventually make that to be carried sort of like this, and to be able to have it to as a kind of novelty piece to take with me from time to time. So the key learnings were the stacked leather with epoxy between each layer. Very comfortable handle, by the way, and I really kind of like the stacked leather. Again, I will finish that with my beeswax and mineral oil combination once I have smoothed it out and sanded it just a little bit more to get some of the ridges and things that are still on it. I want to wait till the weather improves, and I'll take it outside and use it on my disc sander outside to finish shaping some of that. Overall, the project went very, very well. It's a question of taking one's time, having the design concept, and having the freedom to do a little bit of experimenting. And overall, except for the error with where the tang comes out of the knife, I'm fairly pleased with that as a learning project. Anyway, this is John from Compass Rose Bushcraft. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Thank you.